Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Sayva Spotlight. Today, I am here with Jason Kerkmans of Mindset Integrated. He is the founder, and Chris Airriess, who is the CEO. Mindset Integrated does quantitative MRI and DTI analysis for traumatic brain injury cases. Jason and Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, great to be here, John.
Appreciate it. So, Jason, I'll start with you. Could you give us a 30-second overview of mindset in your own words? I know I read the brief here, but how would you frame this to the audience?
Sure. We're an ambitious little company. We're trying to do a lot of things at once. So we do quantitative imaging analysis of brain MRIs, which basically means we take the data that the MRI machine captures of an individual's brain, and we compare that to data from a normative control group of brains that are sex and age matched to that person. So we can say where in the brain they're abnormal. In addition to that, we have a legal consulting practice where we help attorneys collect advanced data like the imaging data we process, neuropsychological data, psychiatric exam data, and evaluate how it tells a picture about that individual's brain, whether they're in a civil case or a criminal case. And then in doing that, we realized we had a big need for understanding their pre-existing condition, or what they came in as before the whatever the question is that we're trying to identify. And so we developed a software that goes back through all the electronic medical records or the paper records, if they come to us that way, and try to make sense and identify areas where there are more efficiencies that could be built into that review process. So it's all related to brain condition and health evaluations, but we've tackled it from a pretty comprehensive perspective.
Yeah, highly technical stuff here, no doubt about it. So, Jason, let's go to the backstory here. You as the founder. So you're a lawyer by trade, and a certified brain injury specialist. So walk us back to 2012 when you started Mindset Consulting Group inside the Mind Research Network. What were you seeing in the traumatic brain injury cases that made you think, hey, there's something here, I should put together a company?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that it was right out of the gates that we realized that. But what we started doing within the research institution was just trying to find ways in which the expertise there inside could be uh, brought out to the market, and bring in some money for grant funded work that the research institute could benefit from, and then also see if we could develop a market for getting it out there. And we did that by primarily working on cases where we pulled together full teams of experts. So a lot of times in criminal cases, we'd get brought in to evaluate the defendant's mental health or brain condition, and we'd bring in a child developmental psychologist and a neuroradiologist and maybe a psychopharmacologist, and we'd look through everything, recommend what testing could be done, and a very labor intensive, really expensive process to have all these experts working together. And it's great experience, and in doing it, we just tried to find ways in which we could find more efficiencies, and make it more available to a larger number of people or cases, and build some profit margin in. So we went about the process of taking this really labor intensive, highly specialized uh, analysis or grouping of experts, and built the efficiencies from there.
So you're on the New Mexico Supreme Court Rules of Evidence Committee and the Brain Injury Advisory Council. So for the folks listening who are unfamiliar with these types of things, what are the real world consequences of getting brain imaging evidence wrong in the courtroom?
I mean, brain injury is a really interesting it's in a really interesting moment right now. So there's lots more awareness now of brain injury than 20 years ago, from sports to military, car accidents. Everyone's much more aware of how fragile the human brain can be, or may be, if it's subject to a trauma. But it's still difficult to get that type of care when you have anyone whose kid has come home complaining of a concussion. They want to throw everything that they can at it, but the medical industry really hasn't developed a repeatable care process that you go into your doctor and you're going to get treated the same whether you are in Albuquerque, New Mexico, or San Diego, California. It just hasn't really spread. And part of that is because every brain injury is so unique. It's a unique person that comes with their unique pre-existing disposition. The brain injury itself can come manifest in multiple ways. And then the reaction, the brain's own secondary cascade following that injury can all be unique. And so it's hard to say, put them through one single process is gonna be the treatment course. And being on the governor of New Mexico as a brain injury advisory council and being on that has really exposed me to how unstandardized the medical model is for brain injury across the country. Now, legally, brain injury evidence is scientific evidence, and the rules around how to get evidence into a legal case are pretty specific and take a lot of work to make sure that the right evidence is presented, that it's considered, that it gets in front of the decision makers in the case, whether it's the judge or the jury. And so the two interact. We've got a burgeoning field of brain injury research and advancement, and the legal system's application of that is all brand new as well. And so how we sort of work to bring the two together is a real big component of what Mindset does. And hopefully, I think we've done quite a bit of work to help both sides advance outside of the legal arena. So the biggest problem, getting back to your question, the biggest problem about not getting it right in a legal case is that someone suffering doesn't get to fully present the evidence of their suffering. And it's really hard when, bones heal, bruises go away, PT takes place, and maybe your physical, orthopedic or soft tissue damage gets recovered, or we can place a value on it. But how do we place a value on the fact that now, you're fighting with your husband every night, or you can't manage your checkbook effectively anymore? And the legal system is really tasked with putting a final number on what that means. So getting it right while not leaving these people who are suffering just sort of out in the dark is the biggest danger.
Talk about the decision in 2020 to spin Mindset integrated out as an independent company. What was the catalyst, and now's the time to do that? How did that all come about?
Well, we had such great foresight that there was going to be a pandemic and we'd have a little break to spin out, so we timed that perfectly. No, in actuality, we'd been building toward it for about 3 years. We had realized that primarily the quantitative analysis or the post-processing of the MRI brain data had gotten to the point where we could do it at scale. And as we refined that process and built in the quality control, checks, and were able to do it more automated, we realized that, being inside a nonprofit research entity wasn't the right spot for this. It really should be a for-profit company that can try to monetize this technology even more. And so we began the process of spinning out. It happened that I think we created Mindset Integrated in July of 2020, so right in the heart of the pandemic response. And that allowed us, fortunately, a lot of the courts had shut down or gone to completely remote hearings. And so we had a little break in our consulting work, not as much demand there, which allowed us more time to actually spin out. So it was a little bit fortunate in what otherwise was a really trying time.
Thanks, Jason. So we're gonna pivot over to Chris here. Chris, so Chris is the CEO, and we've been fortunate enough now to work with Chris at two different companies. So, Chris, again, good to see you, and I'm happy that we're still working together. So, you came here from
For sure.
Cortex AI. You were the CEO, and they were pioneers in their space. So, how did you end up in mindset, and what made you say yes? How did you know that this was a good transition and a good fit for you?
Thanks for having us here, Johnny. Today, it's great to be here. And yeah, for sure. I was part of Cortex back in 2007 when we first launched the very first software for quantifying brain MRI data. So we were measuring gray matter structure volumes and looking at that as sort of in relation to various disease processes like Alzheimer's disease. And then we moved on to multiple sclerosis and epilepsy and things like that. One thing that I'd always wanted to look at was DTI imaging, diffusion tensor imaging, for the analysis of white matter tracts that connect those various structures of the brain, because those are some of the most sensitive things that can degrade during disease processes, but also obviously during traumatic brain injury. So I had tried for some time to get that to happen at Cortex, and it just never really fit within the business model of the company, which was doing very well on the products they had. So I took a year out to go look after my mother, who was 100 years old up in Canada. And during that time, somebody that I brought in as an investor to Cortex, he reached out to me and just said, "Hey, I'm working with this company in New Mexico. This is a medical professional. I'm working with this company in New Mexico. And they're doing a really fantastic job of the gray matter quantification, just like Cortex, but much more importantly, they have the DTI, quantitative DTI, which is something very, very unique that nobody really had at the time." And he said, "Look, I'm looking at investing in this company. If you come over and be CEO, then I will do that." So basically, I got brought on board to try to take what Jason and the team were doing on the forensic side and turn that into a clinical application. And so, like Jason said, undiagnosed TBI can be hugely traumatic in people's lives. It's very often overlooked by the medical system, and something that families suffer from, the patient suffers from, and it's something that we really need to find a solution for. So, I felt that this was something where I could really make a difference in the clinical world, and also continue to contribute on the forensic side by advancing the products that we're developing. And so it was a great opportunity. Started talking with Jason, and then after some time, we made it happen.
Fantastic. I think that's a good segue into this next question here. So, Jason originally built the company from the legal consulting angle. You're coming at it from more of a med tech and quantitative imaging side. So, how'd you figure out, how to work together, what the division of labor looks like, and like how have your roles shaped out now that you've been there for a bit?
I'll I'll say I defer to Jason, and we have another attorney in the company called Rebecca Shore, who's VP of Operations, and the two of them are great legal minds, and I defer to them on legal issues. Let's just say that I don't make decisions that could impact us on the legal forensic front at all. We make a lot of we basically run the company together as a team. It's a great partnership. Everybody is really contributing, and it's fantastic.
Awesome. All right, let's hop into just some entrepreneur questions, and either of you guys, feel free to take these together. So, you're operating in a category where your customers include plaintiff attorneys, defense attorneys. You're working on both sides on different occasions. So, how what is the external pressures when dealing with one side or another to help provide them with the data they need for their case? What does that all look like?
I'll let
I think
Jason answer much of that question, but let me just say that our number one thing is we're providing unbiased scientific data. So it doesn't really matter which side we work for. We're providing as much as we can, the most accurate information we can about the brain of the person we're looking at.
Yeah, and I think that's central to what we've always tried to do is just the data is going to be what the data is, and we'll help the groups hiring us understand what it means, and we'll bring in the right experts who can speak to it or present it in a way that lay people can understand it as well. But we obviously are limited by whatever the results are. So sometimes the person that they call us about, then they're really adamant about getting an MRI, has metal in their body that prevents them from getting an MRI. And that's the limit. We're not going to be able to help them much with an MRI. They may have a bunch of other pre-existing records that we could then make sure get clearly communicated and help them as much as possible, make sense of what's going on in their case. But that may be the extent of what we're able to do. And truthfully, whether it's plaintiffs' attorneys or defense attorneys, prosecutors or criminal defense attorneys, the ones that keep coming back and that we work with regularly are understanding, and they just want to make sure that they're doing their job to the best of their ability. So, the pressure of someone asking for us to produce some sort of result for them to win their case has been really minimal, if ever we've come across it. And we certainly haven't, had it come up a second time with someone we've worked with.
Healthcare and legal, are regulated, slow moving, and you guys are kind of in the middle of both of these industries. So, what and maybe this was for Chris here, but what part of running this business, has surprised you, from going from a more of a SaaS model to this?
I think the biggest thing is coming from a clinical company. I always felt like the companies working in the forensic legal space were kind of just spinning plates and trying to make things show up the way they wanted to show up. So, like Jason said, we don't take cases where somebody's trying to get us to bend an answer. What's been really surprising to me is that the bar of scientific excellence required by the software in the medical forensic field, the legal forensic field, is actually much higher in a way than an FDA clinical field. Because with the FDA, you set the criteria for what you're going to do with your software, you meet that criteria, you go through, you show you're not going to kill anybody with your software, and then the FDA approves it. I mean, it's a long, slow process with a ton of documents. It's painful to get through, but there's ultimately not a massive amount of challenges to your software. Basically, if it does what you said it's going to do, then you get through. In the legal space, every single case you go into, especially if it's a high value case, the opposing team is going to hire the best possible expert they can find to try to do everything they can do to discredit your software. So every single time you go through the case is like 10 times going through the FDA, because they're going to challenge every single piece of what you're doing and try to discredit it. So you have to have rock solid foundation, you have to have rock solid documentation, you have to be able to show that your software is credible and robust and doing what it's supposed to be doing in order to survive those challenges in court. And we've been through those, I don't know, 30 plus times at least. And it's something that, every time we get used in a case, we have to prove again that we're robust and effective and doing what we say we're doing. So that's been a big surprise for me, just how hardcore the forensic market is really from that perspective. So that's been really interesting. It's definitely walking the line of things you can't say is very similar in both clinical and legal. You can't publish things on your website that are outlandish claims, and that will get you in trouble with the FDA or get you in trouble in a case and with opposing counsel latching onto some claim you made that you can't substantiate. So we have to be very, very careful with everything we say publicly. And it's drives our marketing people crazy, obviously, that Jason goes through and says, nope, can't say that. But that's the way it is. And our same FDA regulatory guy is like, nope, can't say that. So it's a fine line you got to walk to be able to promote what you're doing without making any claims that can run afoul of either of those organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, credibility is just so important in what you do. So, the headquarters are in Albuquerque, and it's not necessarily like a med tech capital or legal tech capital of the country. So, have you found any advantages or disadvantages on being in a market like that, as opposed to maybe a more major med tech market like a Boston or even a San Diego? What has it been like, building this business in Albuquerque?
I think the investor community is where we really have challenges in Albuquerque. I mean, Albuquerque is scientifically amazing. I mean, some of the largest expenses of government research funding are in Los Alamos and Sandia Labs there in New Mexico. There's been obviously a history of massive scientific development in that state. There's a huge talent base. There's not a really large investor community compared to what Silicon Valley or Boston area would have, or even San Diego, for instance. So that's been a bit of a challenge, but I'll let Jason speak to that as well. Obviously, as a Albuquerque native and somebody who lives there still.
I'm a big fan of New Mexico in general, so that part's been great. I will agree with Chris that we've largely bootstrapped the development of this, and we take our revenue and reinvest it in future development and ongoing projects. And so if we were in one of those larger markets, we may be more investor involved, and that for better or worse, that might have helped things move faster or changed the trajectory of what we are doing. I think the labor market here and the access to people that we've been able to bring in has been a great benefit, though. And so we are also pretty spread out. So Chris is in San Diego much of the time. We have team members in San Francisco and Houston and Boston as well. And so as we've grown, we're still we've got fingers across the country, but I'm proud of the fact that we're still headquartered here in New Mexico.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, sounds like there's a great talent pool, and that was definitely something I wasn't aware of, from a medical spend standpoint. All right, let's talk about where the company's going. So the product arc here, it started with quantify and then case review to Qluminate, and now a full service case review. So if we look back on that timeline, it looks like you've moved from we do the analysis for you to here's a platform that you can help run yourself. Is that correct, or how would you talk about the product arc?
You want to go, Chris?
I think that's you, Jason.
Okay.
At least in the beginning of it.
I think it's a little bit of trying to provide our services and tools to the largest number of people. So we still get a lot of groups who call us and say, I want you guys to take care of everything. I want you to, help make sure that the best science is deployed, that the right people are speaking to it, and that they're all speaking the same language, soup to nuts. And others, in the market, as it becomes more mature, especially around identifying brain injuries and presenting that, are looking more for an individual piece of that. So they say, we may need a neuropsychologist in Kentucky who's familiar with imaging and can speak, to all these different results. Do you have someone? Or we've got a person in Georgia and we want to get their brain MRI done and have your quantitative analysis. Where can we go? And so we've started by being comprehensive, and then as the trajectory of the business developed, realized we could offer this more a la carte service, and have done that across our different tools, our different platform tools. So our Quantify report is the most labor intensive, has expert review involved, and the Qluminate report is also a quantitative brain MRI report that produces all the quality control data just for the neuroradiologists to integrate on their own. So we're not nearly as much of a lift on our part. In case review, we developed that software. If you've ever tried to collect all of your personal health records in the past, you'll find that they're littered with repetition. There's giant gaps that you're like, wait a minute, I had an appendectomy that's nowhere in here. And there's lots of, it's difficult making sense of it all if you're not within a single hospital system a lot of times. And so we developed a software just to help us with that in the cases we were working on. And Rebecca, who Chris mentioned earlier, got so good at developing it and using it that we realized, like, this is an incredibly efficient way of making sense of anyone's records. We should offer this outside of the company as well. And so taking a tool that was really, designed to make our lives easier and more efficient, and expanding it out to everyone else was the impetus there. And then as AI, came soaring onto the everyone's consciousness, we realized our framework fits really well for integrating AI without having to, without, I guess, easing the fear of hallucinations and AI getting things wrong. It's a completely closed system, so it's not pulling in extra information or making things up outside of what's in those records. And we have a human-led component of it to where everything that the AI does also gets checked by a human. So when you go through and you begin looking at your medical records or education records, police records, whatever it is on our software, we've taken a lot of the efficiencies that AI provides and just made a review process where the human is able to say, like, yep, this all looks correct. This is relevant to this question that I'm working toward, or no, not relevant, but we're going to store it for later in case something changes in it. So
yes, it sounds like you have a strong human in the loop process there.
yeah, and that's sort of like how we've done this from the get-go is, bring in the humans when necessary to provide that expertise, but how can we automate and make more efficient use of the latest science and technology so that it gets out there.
Yeah, when you made the comment about the medical records, I mean, I think I have 6 different my charts, and somehow none of them are synced together.
None of them talk to each other.
Each time I get a new one, I have to give them the same information from the other 6. It's quite a system we've built.
Well, yeah, and in our process, I mean, we were paying experts to go through it at $750 an hour, and they would, like, when we first started the idea of coming up with something, I remember this neuroradiologist that we worked with saying, like, look, I charge $1,000 an hour, and I don't want to even charge you for this because I'm just flipping through pages that are repetitive, but I'm also really annoyed that I have to do it, so I'm going to charge you for it, because until you come up with a more efficient way that doesn't waste my time, like, I've got to account for that. And so, there's a huge waste across the entire spectrum of money and time just going through material that really didn't serve a purpose.
Sounds like a perfect spot for AI. So well done there.
Perfect spot for AI, but still we need to have the human oversight, and that's a big thing. Is we have people that are trained, that understand this stuff, that can actually cross-check and make sure that the AI findings are actually reflected in the records accurately before we turn over a case to the attorneys. And they love this, being able to have this, summary of their case available at a fingertip and a mouse click, and be able to share it with the experts, share it with the other attorneys, and basically collaborate on a case through the case review platform. It's a great tool.
I mean, it must help tremendously with speed too, I'd have to imagine, based on what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, the court cases drag out for so long that, an expert will come in 18 months later, and, they'll show up at a deposition, and typically these people are overworked, they're underslept, and they haven't reviewed the case before they actually get where they're going. And so now they can just pop open case review. They've got everything right in front of them, all the summarized records, the timeline is on a chart in front of them, and so they can see everything in the case in a glance and look like they're actually prepared without having done much in advance. So it's very helpful for people.
Yeah, your product's making them look good. That's awesome.
Exactly.
So, one more kind of more technical question here, or more about your product. So you're the only US-based provider of quantitative DTI and volumetric analysis, and you're in 100+ imaging centers. What does your next 100 look like? Is it more of the same? Are you going to just keep going back to the similar places you've been selling into, or are you expanding your strategy?
We're working across the board, really. We're looking at, we work with a lot of independent imaging centers and with imaging center networks, outpatient primarily, but we do have a lot of hospital-based installations as well, primarily where we scan people on the criminal side, where we do defense work. But we'll continue to do that. I think the expansion area for us is sort of in the personal healthcare market, which we've recently been setting up some scanners for. And that's a big market that's growing, and so that's one to add to the list. But we'll continue to just push every scanner that can possibly run our protocols.
Over the next year or so, what's success look like for you guys? Where are you trying to get to in your short-term goals?
FDA clearance is the number one short-term goal that we're kind of all rowing towards as quickly as we can right now. So the team is pretty much, the development team is 100% focused on the FDA clearance. So that's going to be important for us both in the forensic market and obviously then getting into clinical practice, which is where we'd all like to be in terms of making a difference in patients' lives and sort of improving the outlook of people suffering from TBI. But yeah, getting that FDA clearance for the company is big, and then follow-up funding round to sort of supplement that and power the expansion of everything from that point.
It's exciting stuff. It sounds like a good year ahead. You guys have plenty to do, that's for
It's an
sure.
exciting one. Lots to do. There's no shortage of things to do, that's for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, to wrap us all up, Jason, this one's for you. So, for an attorney or imaging center who's listening, and they weren't aware of Mindset, what's a great place for them to start or connect with you or inquire more?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously have a website, mindsetintegrated.com, and there's lots of different opportunities to reach out to us there. We're glad to work with partners in the industry like imaging outpatient imaging centers who are looking to add post-processing to their roster of services that they provide patients, and lawyers directly, when they have cases that they want to make sure get applied the best and most advanced science to their investigations of the brain. And then as we grow, the one group we're not yet, as Chris mentioned, you're not yet sort of servicing or providing to are individuals themselves. We get called by individuals a lot of times, um, but we don't really have a method for providing that directly to them yet. But as we grow and get FDA clearance and this gets rolled out, we'll be able to expand these services beyond just the legal cases or the ones that a doctor is referring over for related to a brain injury, and make it part of people's more personal health evaluation and clinical care pipelines for brain injury and other conditions. And so I think our website is probably the best location to keep tabs on where that is. And if there's, like Chris said, or I think you actually brought it up, John, we're in 100 different imaging centers around the country, and that's growing every month. So if it's somewhere that we haven't done work before, chances are we're heading there soon.
Fantastic, Jason. And Chris, I'm going to give you the hard-hitting question to wrap us all up. As someone who still lives in San Diego, I lived there for 8.5 years. I miss it every day, especially during the Midwest winters. What's your favorite taco shop?
That's a funny one. I think it's called Raoul's now, over in Encinitas on Encinitas Boulevard. It's a great spot. The Justin burrito is a thing to get.
Oh my goodness. I dream about the shrimp taco from the taco stand on Pearl Street in La Jolla. I think
Oh
about it.
yes,
I think
yes, yes,
about it
yes.
way too often still. Out here in Wisconsin, that's just not something that we do very well.
I did
Yeah, I
my
have a.
undergrad in San Diego, and mine was Kono's in Pacific Beach.
Oh,
I don't know how many times I've been there. I've ordered two things on their entire menu, but it's always a number two burrito, which is fantastic.
yeah, yeah, right on Crystal Pier. I was in PB for six plus years. What a place.
Oh, nice. Can I
Well,
do a
yeah,
little unsolicited shout out to Sayva and answer the one question you didn't ask, which was something that you wish somebody had told you? I think, not necessarily in this company because I've run a few startups now, but one of the things I thought that I could do when I started was do everything internally. And I found that trying to do finance in-house without knowing what you're doing is hard. Trying to do HR in-house in a small company is not only hard, but I think absolutely shouldn't be allowed, because you need somebody in HR that the company that people can go talk to outside of senior management that control their destiny. So working with Sayva over the years has been fantastic. When I came into Mindset, that's the very first thing I did was engage Sayva for both HR and finance, and it's really something that I would urge every founder to outsource like that. And really appreciate working with you guys.
Thanks so
Yeah.
much, Chris. The feeling's
I'll echo
mutual.
that. It's been a huge lift off of the having started the other way, and Chris coming on and bringing Sayva has been a huge release of weight off of our collective shoulders.
Well,
Let's us focus on what we're doing, run a lean team, and just focus on our strengths and not try to pretend to be something we're not.
Well, we're happy to be along for the ride and being able to support you guys. And I think we'll have to pencil a date for a year from now to check in and see how this thing continues to go.
Sounds great.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, John.
Awesome.